So, on that note, on behalf of Women Economic Forum, I'm Nisha Dhanuka, and I welcome each one of the panelists for discussing a very, very important and relevant topic today: medtech and the Internet of Medical Things. How connected medical devices are transforming healthcare. And I see a lot of, I think the entire panelist is from this healthcare world, and I'm a chartered accountant, don't relate to this industry, or the insights. So it will be very insightful me to witness this session. So I welcome Dr. Shiva, Mitali, Dr. Veena, Shanti, Abhinav, Nandakishore for taking out time from a busy schedule at night, 10 o'clock at night shows your commitment. Welcome to the forum. And now I would hand it over to Shiva to moderate this session. I will pop up again 10 minutes before the session for handing over a thank you and an awards to the esteemed panelist and the moderator. So thank you so much. Over to you, Dr. Shiva.
Thank you, Nisha. It is indeed my pleasure to be moderator for this session under the banner of Women Economic Forum. The topic today is MedTech and the Internet of Medical Things, how connected medical devices are transforming the healthcare. A very, very important aspect in the current day scenario, especially post-pandemic. There are several advantages of connecting the medical devices to the digital technology in the form of what I would do is, as I said earlier, I would spend about 2 to 3 minutes on providing some kind of an overview, and then post that we will go around the panel and have question and answers so that the audience could be benefited. As you are all aware, healthcare is one of the largest sectors in terms of revenue and employment in India. And Indian healthcare delivery system is categorized under public healthcare and the private healthcare. Public healthcare is primarily confined to primary healthcare centers and has limited secondary and tertiary care institutions, especially in the cities. Whereas the private sector provides majority of secondary, tertiary, and quaternary care in institutions with a major concentration in metro cities, Tier 1, and some of the Tier 2 cities. One important aspect that we all need to understand, and I'm sure each one of you understand, is that there has been a spurt in non-communicable or lifestyle diseases, which accounts for more than half of the deaths in the country. India is a land of opportunities for players in medical device industry, and medical devices industry plays a very, very important role in the progression of the healthcare sector. And companies are investing heavily in innovative services and also innovative solutions and creating lucrative low-cost digital solutions. Let us come directly to the topic of the day, that is the connected medical devices, and then how they are beneficial and how it be useful for us. Patient interactions with healthcare system often involve interaction with equipment and devices, either be it syringes or bandages to MRIs, CT scans, etc. The medical technology industry designs and manufactures wide range of products, helping in healthcare organizations to achieve better patient outcomes, lower healthcare costs, improved efficiency, and new ways of engaging and empowering patients. One of the greatest challenges that the Indian healthcare system faces is accessibility, affordability, and accuracy. These three are very, very critical, and these need to be kept in mind always. Major advances in wireless technology, miniaturization, and computing power are driving the innovation in medtech, leading to the development of an increasing number of connected medical devices that are able to generate, collect, analyze, and transmit data. Today, we have at least 2 CIOs in the panel now who would be very interested in the data and data crunching and analyzing the data. The data, along with the devices themselves, are creating Internet of Medical Things. a connected infrastructure of medical devices, software application, and healthcare systems. That is what we are going to talk today. The Internet of Medical Things is rapidly transforming medical technology's role and relationship within healthcare and healthcare organizations to streamline their critical operations and workflow management to improve patient care even from remote locations. We need to keep in mind these remote locations because 70% of the Indian population live in rural area and 70% of the healthcare infrastructure is in the urban area. So we need to be very conscious about it and how these connected medical devices and the IoMT would be helpful. Connected medical devices will have profound impact in patients, clinicians, and the life sciences industry. So let us focus on how IoMT transforming medtech role in healthcare and impact the increased use of connected medical devices and medtech companies. So with this background, I would like to go to the panel. I would like to first ask Dr. Veena Chakravarti. Madam, the medical technology industry designs and manufactures wide range of products, as I said, in healthcare organizations for achieving the better patient outcomes. These are all primarily focusing on lower healthcare costs, improved efficiency, and new ways of engaging and empowering patients. The question to you is, what are your thoughts on the readiness of the ecosystem in India for manufacturing such products to counter the competition of multinational companies and also countering the competition from low-cost imports? Over to you, Dr. Veena.
Thank you for this question, and it's something which is really bothering me a lot, and I wanted to put in front of the panel for discussion on this topic as such. So basically, it is an excellent time to be in the healthcare and the medtech industry. And coming to the, if you're asking me my thought process on the readiness of the entire ecosystem for manufacturing or replacing any of the imports. So if you see, India imports 44K crores of worth of medical devices, which is really, really a huge number. So are we ready for it? The straight answer is no. Because India never had it. You can look at the heterogeneity of the medical devices. We say right from mask to oxygen cylinders to invasive equipment. Everything is a medical device. You have a huge range of medical devices. And again, just to say what is it required straight away to make a medtech device or a medical device is a huge number of laboratories, right? Unlike other tech devices, we need huge number of laboratories. Somewhere I read that you need more than 15 laboratories to really make one product. I mean, at various stages of development. Okay, and to be precise, it is 18 laboratories or something like that. And India never had a place where you can see all the laboratories together accessible for a medical manufacturer, one thing. Secondly, even for the large manufacturing, the kind of manufacturing setups required is altogether a different mindset and a different kind of thing which you can see in China, Japan, and Taiwan kind of places. So India has always been a service provider to these large developed countries. So if you ask me, the ecosystem, whether it is ready to deploy, no. But there is a potential because we have already started talking about the manufacturing. What it requires is a kind of a collaboration. I mean, again, it has to start some time, and it has started, I would say, thanks to COVID, which has accelerated this. And there is a huge amount of adopting medical devices also. People are comfortable adopting medtech today in healthcare. So that is another thing. And plus the kind of internet, the communication facilities we have, the infrastructure we have, that also is accelerating the deployment of the medtech solutions in healthcare. So yeah, the answer is no, but nevertheless, the process has started, and definitely I think more ecosystems. So like I heard there is one setup in Hyderabad which has this kind of a setup where you have complete 18 laboratories where and they manufacture lakhs of masks per day and huge amount of oxygen cylinders, thousands of oxygen cylinders per day, and the entire ecosystem is available in one place. So AMTZ, I guess, if I remember the name. So such facilities.
That's in Vizag.
Yeah, it is in Vizag.
That is in
right?
Vizag.
It is in Vizag. So if you can have such facilities in multiple cities, probably that will really accelerate. That will really encourage medtech, the device manufacturers more, and that is what is the need of the hour, I would say. Otherwise, we will be spending a lot of time in logistics of coordinating and getting things done. That is that's not at all friendliness for manufacturing. So I think we need such kind of a collaborative, the hubs which can provide us all the facilities and then promote manufacturing. I think
Dr.
that's my
Veena,
thought.
you have very rightly said that the statistics show that 80 to 85% of medical devices are imported. While the imports from some advanced or developed countries is significant, but there are huge amounts, quantities of imports that are happening from other countries which are of low cost products, which are making very difficult for Indian manufacturers to penetrate into the market. Do you think that, while I agree with you that, we need to have infrastructures like AMTZ or some of the technology parks that are coming up, say in Uttar Pradesh, in Telangana, and some other states, that is the way to go. But do you think that, we have the necessary talent, number one? Number two, do we have the necessary ancillary structure to manufacture and counter this competition so that our dependency on imports is significantly reduced?
Basically, the skill set, if you are asking me, the skill set required is in a multi-fold. You need different kind of skill sets to make medtech products. It is not like any engineering product. Aeronautical engineer can do excellent aeronautic solution or a devices or a system. A VLSI system, I can make a very good communication system, but that's not the kind of requirement in medtech. Medtech requires different level of, and especially manufacturing requires different layers of skill set, I would say. So you need a kind of a layer of skilled laborers who can really assemble and then do, which is, I would call it as a semi-skilled laborers. So who are basically a diploma holders or ITIs and or SLC pass outs. So they are the kind of one who can really assemble, test, and all. That is one layer of thing. And then comes the engineers who can really maintain, design. So a little higher level of activities, they can manage this kind of production. That is second level of skill set required. And the third set of skill set would be R&D kind of thing, who will innovate and come up with the next generation of medtech devices. So it is not necessary that we have to just like that replace whatever we are importing. It requires, we can do much better than that. We can integrate many functions. We can come out with altogether a new replacement for the kind of solutions we have with the kind of the people set we have. So they have to be skilled appropriately, and plus, unlike a pure engineering solution developers, right? MedTech requires a hands-on kind of experience, right? An engineer, though he's an engineer, has to be physically in hospital environment, which is altogether a different setup for him to work on. Whereas other departments can operate I mean, they can focusingly work on their engineering problems wherever they are. Whereas in healthcare, it is altogether different. An engineer has to be hands-on in the environment where it is operating. For example, you have an anesthesia machine or something. If it goes bad, he has to be physically there in OT. So the kind of the skill set, though you are an engineer, the kind of special skills required is different here. So whether I'm
sure we will be able to build that kind of.
Yeah, we have to. Yeah, it requires a multiple skilled, multidisciplinary skills, and it also requires a kind of a total revamp in terms of hands-on skill development rather than theoretical or fundamentals.
Thank you, Doctor. So let me come to Miss Mithili Biswas. Madam, you come from a healthcare provider organization, and then we are talking more and more of medical devices connected to digital technology or Internet of Medical Things. So the question to you, since you are your organization directly interacts with the patients and provides the support to the patients. According to you, how can connected devices, that is these medical devices connected to the IOMT situation, how can connected devices in MedTech impact the future of healthcare, very specifically making healthcare accessible, accurate, and affordable? At the end of the day, I think these 3 A's are very important: accessible, affordable, and accurate. So what do you think about it, Ms. Mithili?
Okay. So before the pandemic, the way healthcare operated was very different. I mean, the only positive thing, as Dr. Veena was also saying, that COVID did was probably accelerated the adoption of technology. It helped changing the mindset of a lot of people, especially from the healthcare provider point of view. So traditionally, healthcare has been very reactive. A patient falls sick, comes to the hospital, gets treated, goes back. We never thought of the hospital, operating outside the walls of the hospital. I mean, remotely connecting to a patient, or, even connecting to a patient before he falls sick. So, the impact that I see, and it's long term. I mean, we have to go a very long term till all of this becomes a reality. But happy that I think people have started thinking about it. A lot of focus is going on it. So the major change which I see it will bring in is going from a traditionally reactive model to a more predictive model. So not wait for the patient to fall sick or the emergency to happen and then take an action, but rather, predicting, and taking action earlier, which means the stay in the patient in the hospital, reduces. Of course, your diagnosis, becomes much easier and maybe more accurate. So the doctor has more time in hand. And how does it happen? Because of these devices is just generating data. I mean, the data is what is the next oil, we say, and it's important to the hospital. So with that data, a lot of AI built on top of it gives a lot of insights. Based on it, the doctors can react faster, predict what's going to happen, and then take action. So that I see a major change going forward, going from a reactive mode to a predictive mode, which also brings in the next change, which is, a lot value-based care, which is again a new term, which has been there in the healthcare. So adding value, it's just not, you coming, doctor gives you hundreds of tests and then diagnoses, and, it's a long process, but add value, so a patient gets quality healthcare. Of course, as you said, affordable. Because if you're able to detect it earlier, you can probably prevent a surgery or, last minute things, which of course will be much more cost effective. To make it affordable, I think we have a long way to go, because the cost of medical devices and the entire infrastructure around it has to develop. And there's a lot of investment needed from different stakeholders into that. So I wouldn't say it is already affordable, but hopefully we'll reach that stage, where it becomes affordable. And of course, acute, because you are reducing a lot of manual intervention. So these are all sensors and machines that's generating the data. So which means the quantum of human error is going to go down. because they are all machines generating the data. But of course, as I said, the infrastructure, the AI, machine learning, and all of that has to become a reality before this can happen. So that's what the two ways I see. One is going from reactive to predictive and getting more value out of this.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think you have expressed it very nicely. Now let me come to Ms. Shanti Mathur. One of the things that have happened during the pandemic is, a lot of remote diagnosis and remote consultancy has happened. And there have been few devices that are connected to the digital technology or internet that have been able to transmit the information to the medical professional. And as Ms. Mithili said that, artificial intelligence and the predictiveness will all increase. My question to you, Ms. Shanti, is like, can internet-based medical devices really help replace medical professionals? Do you think that one day we will be dependent, significantly lesser amount of medical professionals while using these medical devices, which are connected devices?
Yeah, I think that's a very pertinent question, and it I would like to extend an example from what Mithali just talked about, and your question about how they are helping better access. Okay, I think you talked about access, affordability, and accuracy, but this particular question about replacing medical professionals, okay, I think is pertinent from the fact that one of the significant challenges, apart from the fact that we are importing so many 85 to 90% of our medical equipment. One thing which is global, not only in India but global, is the shortage of medical professionals, and therefore, especially in the rural areas, as you pointed out, 70% of the population is in the non-metro areas, and the 70% of facilities is in metro areas. So it is the tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 towns which have shortage of good medical facilities and access to good medical professionals, and that is a challenge that this connected medical devices or internet-based medical technology is also trying to solve, right? For example, one of the things which has been from before pandemic but has been accelerated is the eICU concept, and I'm quite sure Nandakishore would be able to talk about this as well as an actual user, and I personally had this experience, a chance of setting this up. So in the sense that today we can have the ventilators, syringe pumps, infusion pumps, etc., all of them which are utilized in ICU, completely connected with the central monitoring system, and the entire data is transmitted to a central location where more trained medical professionals are available, whereas the patient is in a rural setup, or where a basic medical profession is available to act upon the advice of more skilled medical doctors, right? Now, but the actual patient data has to be available in front of the caregiver to be able to give advice, and that is something which is real, which is happening today, right? And that solves the problem of access, number one, because the patient is in a rural or semi-urban setup and cannot go to a metro city. And it also helps in terms of, I think it improves affordability as well, because if you look at the total cost of getting the treatment, if you have to travel to a city, right, not only just the basic hospital expenses, but the total cost for the patient, it helps greatly. And there are many devices, when they are connected, they provide completely accurate data, and medical professionals can actually act on it. So to that extent, I think there is a lot you can do with let's say less trained or less expert medical professionals, but I don't think we are anywhere closer to completely replacing any medical professional. So I think it's a question of using less skilled resources with better data and providing the care of same quality that a highly skilled medical profession can use. That's where we are today. But with more improvement, it can be. But I don't think we can entirely replace. Maybe I'm not being futuristic, but at the moment, no, I don't see that happening. Entirely replacing.
Yeah, I agree with you that we cannot replace the human element into it. So before I come to Mr. Abhinav Thakur from the IVD sector, let me go to Mr. Nand Kishore. Okay, Nand Kishore also comes from a hospital environment where they provide services to the patient. Major advances in wireless technology, miniaturization, and computing power are driving the innovation in medtech, leading to the development of an increasing number of connected medical devices that can generate, collect, and analyze and transmit the data. This is what we spoke earlier also. This data, along with the devices themselves, are creating Internet of Medical Things. So it is clear. A connected infrastructure of medical devices, software applications, and healthcare services. Coming from a hospital group in India, Mr. Nand Kishore, how do you think the IOMT, Internet of Medical Things, changing the healthcare landscape, number one? And what are the initiatives that have been taken by Manipal Group overall, and more specifically in some of the regions that Manipal Group operates? You're on mute, sir. You're on mute.
Yeah, sorry for that. So that's a technical error. Okay. So good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for inviting me for this panel. So it's a pleasure indeed. So coming to the question on the IOMT, I mean, IOMT is definitely, it's a large market, which was, as per one of the report which I was referring, almost 44 billion market globally in 2018. And then they're expecting the growth to be to almost 256 kind of billion in 2026. Which means that definitely in different countries, this IOMT is catching up momentum, and it is also going to come to India in a big way. And one of the panelists has already said that, are we really ready in India to sort of adopt this new way of providing the services as far as the healthcare setup is concerned? I think we are still not there. It will take some more time for various reasons. And I would like to answer this particular question in two different, aspects, two buckets. I will put this. Using the IOMT, for the enterprise purpose, the internal, optimization, the internal, requirements of a hospital. And then the second aspect is how a consumer can use it from wherever he is, right? So coming to the first side, as an enterprise, are we ready? So I would rather say as an enterprise, we are better prepared in terms of having our legacy and the basic systems, whether it's HIS, PACS, or whatever. Those things are, as far as India is concerned, we are pretty much there. People are strengthening those systems. And then can these systems connect to the IOMT ecosystem? Okay, so largely to the layer 1 or layer 2 or top, maybe healthcare chains in India, pretty much that ecosystem exists today. All right. So coming to Manipal, we had this experiment of IoTs for eICU and ICU setup, and we were quite successful in setting up this kind of IOMT ecosystem almost three years back, and it was really giving us benefits. It worked quite well. That time, almost everything was kind of imported. There was a company called Masimo, and every single device was brought from US or UK or different other countries. So definitely cost factor was quite high there. And therefore the affordability was not so much there as far as the Indian environment is concerned. Today things have changed, and lot many of that kind of stuff is getting sort of manufactured here. But definitely that affordability and the quality, that aspect has still to be sort of looked into it. Second initiative in Manipal, what we were trying is the Fitbit arrangement with Google. So Google and Manipal is currently discussing how we can use this Fitbit device more for health monitoring, patient monitoring, in case of post-op kind of cases, where we can ensure that the patient is connected to the Manipal ecosystem for various data gathering, data collection, running some algorithms on that data, and trying to sort of get some predictive view of the whole data as far as patient is concerned. So eICU and Fitbit, based initiative is in process in Manipal, and we can see good potential. I'm sure the journey will be a little bit slow here because of various reasons. Cost is one of the major reasons, but there is a good potential on that. Now, coming to the consumer side, I mean, somebody wanting to use these devices, basically the sensors, the device like Apple Watch or Fitbit, sitting at home or wherever they are there, I think that will still take some more time for its maturity. And a lot of these things also depends on, your network connectivity and the awareness, more of, knowledge how to use those devices, simplicity, and also for the end user, making sure that these things are affordable. I don't know how many of our patients can afford the, Apple Watch or a Fitbit kind of watch. So that they can capture their health, vital or health related data, and actually push it to an application, and then try and connect to the Manipal environment for submitting that data to doctors at Manipal. So as far as the consumer usage of that is concerned, okay, that is still, I think, will take some more time because of the cost factor, obviously. But at the enterprise level, my view is that enterprise will move a little faster because that is within the hospital environment, and I think there is a good potential. Further extending to the eICU, what I spoke before, we are sort of working with Philips on this particular project, and the plan is that the skilled ICU staff at one of the flagship hospital, can they manage the ICU of the group hospitals? At least the continuous monitoring can be there, and using that, if we are able to optimize the cost of the intensivist and all that, I think that's a good ROI, and that is possible in the near future. So that is what I think my response to your question would be.
So one addition to the points that you have very elaborately expressed what is being done and your thoughts on it. If my understanding is correct, Manipal is also into some of the rural areas, rural clinics, etc. Okay, so is one of the speakers earlier was mentioning about the use of these devices into preventive care, or rather than providing post some event. So are you using any of these devices in the preventive care, or doing your corporate checkups utilizing some of these connected devices, so that you would have more turnaround of people coming in? Any thoughts on that, or anything that you can share it with?
Yeah, well, so not exactly using the the wearables or the sensors based devices, but definitely what we are doing is we are trying more and more mobile based video consultation route to reach out to more and more patients. But as far as data capturing is concerned, health parameter capturing is concerned, that still remains an interactive or a discussion-based thing. I mean, there is a local doctor who will gather those parameters, take those parameters, and transmit to Manipal system. So that model still exists. We have not directly gone to the IoTs kind of stuff for patient consulting through the remote mechanism.
Okay. So thank you very much. So let me come to Mr. Abhinav Thakur. Okay, Abhinav comes from one of the oldest IVD manufacturing companies in India, and then they have been doing very well and are well known in the IVD sector. Abhinav, connected medical devices will have a profound impact on patients, clinicians, and life sciences industry. Since you come from an IVD manufacturing company in India, can you provide some examples of IoT-based devices that are being used today, and how are they beneficial, and what do you see the future of these in the IVD sector?
So I'll give an example of a device which affects the most people in India. India is very infamous for being the diabetes capital of the world. And in our audience, most of the people would probably know someone who is suffering from diabetes. So I'll give this example, which is very relevant to a lot of people in our audience, about the glucometer. So the first glucometer came out in 1956 in a research paper where it took a minute to do the test, and you needed a whole hanging drop of blood to do the test. Today, in less than 5 seconds, the test is done. In less than 5 microliters of blood sample, the test is done. But what do you do when you combine this technology with IoT and make it non-invasive? Is when the real power comes out, which is CGMS, which is continuous glucose monitoring systems. And CGMS is where the data, the glucose sensor is sensing the glucose levels in your blood every 5 minutes and sending it through an IoT to your mobile application, to your caregivers, or even to your medical doctors. And it's sending out real-time data to them. And as a patient, it even gives you alerts. So when your sugar level is fluctuating, you can get alerts and you can manage your disease much better before you start feeling the symptoms. Usually it is like you start feeling the symptoms and then you take some intervention. But in this case, before you feel the symptoms, you get the alert to know what's happening. Because very high or low blood levels can be dangerous when left untreated for too long for glucose. And in a lot of severe cases, we have seen even seizures, coma, and even death can happen. So these alerts, which are based through the IoT, can really be life-saving in a lot of cases when the data alerts go either to the patients or the patient's caregivers like family and friends, or even to the medical practitioners who are looking after the patient. And diabetes affects everyone differently. How food or activity affects one person will not necessarily affect the other person the same way. So looking at these trends, the patients can monitor what kind of food they're having, what kind of lifestyle in terms of exercise, etc. they're doing, and how it affects their blood sugar levels. So finger stick is like taking a photograph, while CGMS is like having a continuous video of the entire journey of the diabetes in the patient. And personalized care can be given. Today, we hear a lot about personalized medicine. So personalized medicine is given because each person reacts very differently to a medicine. So when you're having CGMS and you can see the effect of the medicine on the patient through the remote monitoring or through the data which is sent through the IoT, you can take decisions on what kind of medication to give the particular patient, because each patient reacts differently to medicine. And that's where personalized medicine comes in. And taking it even a step further is when you have artificial pancreas. So that's when you link the CGMS to the insulin pumps. And depending on the sugar level, the insulin pumps release the artificial insulin to the bloodstream. So this technology you can see can really change the game, right? So coming from a standalone meter to something connected over the internet and then connected to insulin pump, creating an entire artificial pancreas can completely change it. This is just one example because this is something which is mainstream. Because there are high volumes of high diabetic patients, the technology has become very robust. It's just a matter of time before these technologies which have become robust move on to the other technologies, another blood test, other remote patient monitoring systems which make it robust. If you look at the market leader in continuous glucose monitoring systems is Abbott. Abbott has the highest growth rate in this field, right? Other companies are struggling, like the market leader in the previous technology is struggling with 5% growth, and Abbott is growing at 25% because this is the way they have predicted, and they've come up with the most convenient way of testing. And this is going to be the future, and this is going to go into other areas. How much ever we don't accept it. For example, inpatient glucose testing in hospitals was not accepted. But over a period of time, as the technology got robust, inpatient testing got accepted. I'll give an anecdote. A simple anecdote is of EV, right? Electronic vehicles. the large manufacturers said, EV is not going to ever come in. Like driving an EV car is like driving your car always on reserve fuel. You never know when it's going to stop because the range is only 50 kilometers. But today, EV is a reality. We have seen EV cars that can go up to 300 kilometers or even more. So this is also going to be reality. It's just a matter of time how fast the technology evolves, how good the technology becomes, and we can see this completely changing and democratizing in vitro diagnostics.
Thanks for that answer. A follow-up question on this one. You specifically took the example of continuous glucose monitoring.
Right.
You really mentioned about Abbott. How affordable are these? Like, right now they're pretty expensive. Okay.
Right.
One of the key things is, India is a diabetic capital, as we all know, and then we need affordability is one of the key points in the 3 A's.
Right.
So, what do you think about having these IVD devices which are connected that could be affordable?
So this applies to all medical devices. Okay, not only CGMS. So every medical device which is imported into India is not affordable. The logic is simple. You cannot manufacture in US or Europe and pay first world salaries and manufacture products and sell it into India, where insurance doesn't even cover these devices, right? So in Europe, CGMS is covered by insurance. So it's not an out-of-pocket expense. So affordability is there. In India, insurance doesn't cover these. And they're imported. So you're importing from a high wage country, a high cost country, and selling into a low wage and a low cost country. So it just doesn't make sense. So the only way to make it affordable is to make in India. And when that happens, I'm sure this technology will not only be affordable to people in India, but also to people all over the world.
When are you making one?
Yes. We are going to be on that journey.
Okay, good to know about it. So let me come to the second round of questions. So let me come back to Dr. Veena again. Madam, patient data security, privacy, and safety are of key importance, right? According to you, what steps have been taken to address these aspects in implementing technologies associated with IOMT?
As of now, if you recall the architecture, if you want to recollect the architecture of these kind of solutions, the data from the patient hops multiple levels. Like if you see, there is a hospital care provider involved, there's a patient involved, there is a payer involved, the insurances and all, and there is the connected medical devices, the device sector is involved, and then there is a analytics platform like cloud servers and all that is involved, and then we have a communication service providers like LTE providers, so internet providers. So if data has to go in all these stages, the obvious fact is that data privacy and security are paramount important, but we never know. I mean, again, when we look at what's happening in even the communication solutions, right, we see that the WhatsApp end-to-end encryption, but in spite of that, we see all the WhatsApp messages getting leaked to the media and all. So it is the problem or the challenge is at multifold. One thing is the user need to know what is the security, what is his rights, and what is his data when it comes to the data, what he has to possess as a right. So that requires a kind of educating a user. Today, user even doesn't know what are his rights in terms of for the data he wants. The second level is, we talk about a lot of encryption methods, lot of authentication methods, and multiple technology-wise, yes, we have all the kind of things, but imposing it, the regulating it or controlling it. So I see nobody understands nobody has a complete understanding of what kind of a security or ecosystem we should have when it comes to privacy, security, and all. But nevertheless, everything is happening in pockets. So it requires altogether a centralized system, a mechanism, which can really monitor this, or a self-learning machines which can really track and then pass it on to the other component or system components. So we are very, very important actually. So the problem has to be addressed in many levels. One is educating everybody and regulating it, and the policies, more importantly, what kind of policy we have to impose to the hospitals. How can hospitals share the data with the internet providers? Can internet providers, at what level, to what extent they can get to see the data? So it is very, very difficult, and we have to define that as a standard or some kind of a policy we have to make, and then push it. That's my first take, but we don't have anything. It's all happening in pockets. I don't think anybody has a complete picture of it. I mean, understanding of it, I would say. I mean, if you ask me, I am comfortable putting maximum security into my setup system. That's it. But beyond that, what if the internet provider leaks it? So I don't have control over it. So it requires a kind of a policy who can really track in multiple system components or whatever we call it. Like there are many people involved in this, many stakeholders involved in this, providing this kind of solution.
Agree with you. Yes, exactly.
Right.
Okay, let me come to Ms. Mithili Biswas again. Madam, you are representing a sector which provides comprehensive patient care. Can you list some challenges in integrating pharmacy, diagnostics, etc., into IOMT from the perspective of a service provider?
Right. So, extending to what Dr. Veena just said, I think the security and possibly, I think the absence of a regulatory body which kind of defines all of this is a major challenge, I would say, because I as a provider don't know, so probably I will implement some things from security, but there is no regulatory body or a set of compliances that very clearly says, this is what you need to do as a provider. This is what you can share. This is what you cannot share. So that part is, not very clear, I would say. Then in terms of technology infrastructure, we are just talking about the sensors generating this data. Now, unless this data interacts with data generated from other devices or other applications in your hospital ecosystem, you can't pretty much do anything about it, right? So how do I integrate that data? So my entire data architecture, not only from these devices, but from everywhere, how the data is generated, how these data interact, because they are all in different format and, different, some are structured, some are not structured. So, the entire data architecture, it's not probably, the data generated from one device might not be compatible with the data generated from another device. And unless these data can talk to each other in some way, then only we can kind of, generate some insights about it. So this interoperability of data, I think that's also a challenge, I would say. Now with the National Digital Health Mission Blueprint coming out, probably that's a good step in that direction, because that lays out quite a few things, in the blueprint. So probably that's the right step, moving forward. But data interoperability is a challenge along with security, because, all these applications, all the machines, sensors, they're generating data in a very different format, very different way, and nobody knows, finally what I'm going to do with it. So that also remains as a challenge. And then, since we are talking about cloud internet coming in, when we talk about this data getting generated and coming to the hospital ecosystem, so also kind of, getting ready with your backend infrastructure. That's something the hospitals also need to start thinking about. I think most of us have already started doing it, since if we are in the future want to rely on this data, we have to make sure that this data flows continuously. It cannot happen that you're relying on it and then suddenly because of some technical fault, you don't get the data. So that backbone of your infrastructure has to be very, very robust. And, you have to think of all scenarios. What happens if the internet is not there? What am I going to do? What I'm going to do with it? So all of this thought, I think, has to come in, which I don't think we are mature enough yet. I mean, there are steps already taken in that direction, but we are not mature enough, and it's it's some journey that we have to cover before, we already reach there. So, and cost, of course, is a big challenge, as all of us spoke about. So that also has to come down. The affordability has to be there to be able to take steps in those directions.
At least we are all talking about these things, and I'm very confident that in the very near future we will overcome those challenges and will be able to have a better solution on this. Okay. Let me now come to Ms. Shanti Mathur. Madam, as I said earlier, that majority of population live in the rural areas, and the healthcare infrastructure there is a challenge. In your view, how helpful are internet-based medical devices in remote health monitoring, and how helpful are these tools in providing healthcare in remote areas of the country?
Yeah, I think I spoke about it earlier as well. I mean, in terms of providing critical care and through, say, EICU, etc. And we also talked about telemedicine, right? Tele-radiology. There are so many other applications which are already out there and being utilized to provide critical care or chronic care or remote care. And that is helpful. So Nand Kishore also touched about the
let me clarify my question probably once again. As we all know that the talent availability in the rural areas is a challenge, number one. Infrastructure is a challenge. Okay. Basic testing like blood sugar or some of the kidney parameters or some of the very, very basic parameters is a challenge. And then the resident in a rural area has to travel to the nearest district hospital or a taluka hospital, spend money, come there, stay, and then get his healthcare done. Okay. So my question, this is what I meant. Probably I did not express it that well. My question is like, how do you overcome? Can we overcome such kind of challenges and minimize the expenditure to the person living in a rural area by using some of the devices which are connected devices, so that he would get a better health care? I would say more on the preventive and also some reactive care, so that overall there is a better health in the Indian population. I think I was
yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah. No, I think we can. Yeah, I agree with you. It can be very useful, very cost effective as well. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So let me come to Mr. Abhinav Thakur. Abhinav, can you list some of the key challenges in adopting connected IVD devices? Do you foresee any challenges? And if so, what are they? And one more point that I would like to add to that is like, what kind of regulatory challenges that would be there?
So sorry to interrupt, Abhinav. First of all, you're in mute, and sorry to interrupt, Dr. Shiva. We just have 3 minutes to close the panel. We need to wrap up by 11 o'clock sharp. Okay. So I just wanted to give you a heads up there, Abhinav, because Dr. Shiva asked you so many questions. So it's asked for you to answer in 3 minutes. So yes, over to you.
I'll wrap it up in 3 minutes or less. In our industry, if you look at it, the biggest challenge is highly fragmented. So if you look at the big lab chains or the big hospital chains, that's only 20% of the industry. Right? The remaining 18% is highly fragmented. There's no national registry. They're not registered, as India's Clinical Establishment Act is completely different in each state, as health is a state subject. So some states require registration of labs, some states don't require registration of labs. So this is one of the biggest challenges that comes in the extremely fragmented industry. So there's no standard of connecting them. But what happened in the 74th Independence Day was the NDHM, which got launched. And I feel this has a lot of potential of getting the labs connected to each other and having the data connected to a central depository. And this will help the patients when they go and meet the doctors. They don't have to carry their lab reports. It'll all be in a health ID card, and it can be shared with the doctors, etc. In emergency situations, when a patient goes into a hospital and there's no background information, all the information will be available through the health ID card of the past reports, what kind of diseases the patient suffered for, what were the past reports of the patient. So this is where I feel the opportunity lies in the NDHM coming in and connecting the entire ecosystem, which is highly fragmented and highly independent right now.
So thank you. I think Nisha, because based on your direction, I will not ask any further question, but I would like to conclude saying that, this is a very long topic, and it is not something that we can discuss in 1 hour or 55 minutes. There are multiple aspects to this topic, and then many more things would come up, challenges, regulatory issues, and then internal challenges, acceptability, quality, all these kinds of things would come in. But nevertheless, I think we have started this discussion, and I am very confident that we will all reach or achieve the objective or the goal that is there, so that I repeat the third time or fourth time that we will have an accessible, affordable, and accurate healthcare in India. Over to you, Nisha.
Thank you so much. It was a great session, and as Dr. Shiva said, that the topic is so dense or intense that you can't wrap it up in 1 hour. It's it needs at least, I think, 3-4 hours of solid discussion to come to any takeaways or to come to solid conclusions. But I think the points that you brought through a lot of insights, and it was points to be pondered upon. So thank you, Dr. Shiva, for moderating the session so well. Thanks, Abhinav, Dr. Veena, Shanti, Nandikishore, and Mithali. It's 11 o'clock, and the energy that I see, if I have kept the session till 12 also, I think I would have seen the same energy level. So thank you so much for being part of the panel and bringing forth your insights and input on this very, very relevant topic in today's era. On behalf of Women Economic Forum, I thank each one of you as a panelist and Dr. Shiva for being a great moderator. On behalf of Women Economic Forum, all of you as speaker and panelist would be awarded with Exceptional Leader of Excellence. The award would be emailed to you shortly. Within a fortnight, you're going to receive it over your email. And any question that we have got from the audience, if it's directed to any one of you, we are going to forward that as well. So on that note, thank you so much. Have a very, very good night and have a great day ahead tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Good night,
Thank you.
everyone.
Good night.
Good night,
Good night,
everyone.
everyone.
Bye.